Welcome to this explainer. We're diving into a really fascinating reality about acquiring new abilities today. You know, we so often think the real bottleneck to mastering a new skill is the learning itself. But actually, as we're about to explore, the true hurdle, the literal thing holding you back from rapid progress, is the unlearning.
I mean, it's incredibly frustrating to feel stuck when you're picking up a new skill, isn't it? You put in the hours, you study the material, but you're just not progressing as fast as you want to be. Well, the truth is, most of our effort is totally wasted fighting a biological battle against our own stubborn habits. It's this hidden friction that just slows down everything we do.
So, here's our roadmap to dismantle those bad habits. We are going to cover the unlearning paradox, a tale of two brains, the hidden reward trap, a 5-step framework to fix it, and finally, accelerating your success. We need to start by addressing a fundamental misconception that derails most people before they even begin. Section 1, the unlearning paradox, and why rewriting is harder than fading.
There's a critical difference we absolutely have to establish right off the bat. Unlearning is not simply forgetting. Forgetting is just a passive process, right? It's where your brain naturally prunes away unnecessary stuff, like an old phone number. But unlearning, that requires actively rewriting old routines and habits. Failing to understand this difference is exactly why so many learners eventually just throw their hands up and quit.
To put this into perspective, think about the time it takes to master a really complex skill. If it takes someone 3 years total to master it, 2.99 of those years are often spent purely trying to let go of the old, ineffective habits. The actual conceptual understanding, the learning part, takes a fraction of the time. The vast majority of your journey is literally just untangling the old wires.
Which brings us to Section 2, a tale of two brains, and the biological battle inside your head.
To really understand unlearning, we have to look at the two distinct parts of your brain that are basically at war here. On one side, you've got your prefrontal cortex. This is the front part of your brain, responsible for active problem solving. It acts kind of like a police officer when you learn something new, but it requires high energy and fatigues really quickly. On the other side, deep inside, is the basal ganglia. This is where your automatic habits live. It's a highly enduring, extremely low-energy, efficient machine. Now, every time you catch yourself falling into a bad habit and your prefrontal cortex successfully challenges it, you trigger something called memory destabilization. I know, it sounds a bit intense, but it's actually fantastic. It means the neural connections in your brain physically loosen up, giving you this brief golden window of opportunity to rewire your brain and replace that old pathway with a new, better behavior.
But here's the real tragedy of this biological setup. The prefrontal cortex is basically fighting a losing battle because it requires so much energy it fatigues incredibly fast. After maybe an hour of policing your thoughts, it just gives out. And once that happens, the highly efficient basal ganglia takes over again, leaving your old bad habits to run absolutely rampant. And the worst part, because you're executing the bad habit again, you are actively reinforcing it all over again.
And honestly, it gets worse, because we're also fighting a faulty reward system. Let's look at Section 3, the hidden reward trap and why bad habits feel so good.
We experience this devastating double whammy. Bad habits aren't just biologically easier for your brain to do, they actually produce false indicators of success. Take rereading your notes, for example. You get the fake reward of covering content quickly, which feels super productive, right? Or writing excessive notes. You see pages filling up, which feels like you're doing a lot of hard work. These fake rewards falsely reinforce the bad habit, completely tricking us into thinking we're making progress when we really aren't retaining anything complex.
There's a quote from our source material that just hits the nail on the head. It says, "Trying to learn a new, complex skill without being good at unlearning is like trying to climb a mountain when you're chained to a boulder." These deeply ingrained, falsely rewarding habits literally become massive, heavy boulders chaining us down while we desperately try to climb.
And it is vital to recognize that these boulders aren't just technical mistakes, like how you read or highlighting everything on a page. They can also be deeply held belief habits. You might even be doing this right now without realizing it. Take perfectionism. When you were younger, working hard to make everything absolutely perfect might have led to great grades, but as you tackle more complex, high-level skills today, perfectionism often severely reduces your productivity. It's a belief habit you have to unlearn.
Fortunately, we do have a powerful psychological intervention to break this loop. Section 4, 5 Steps to Unlearn, a neuroscience-backed framework.
This 5-step framework is going to act as your essential toolkit to systematically neutralize that basal ganglia and efficiently install new neural pathways.
The steps are: recalibrate reward, identify the old habit, create a pattern interrupt, reflect, and constraint drilling. Let's walk through exactly how to apply this. Step 1 is extinction. Think of a toddler throwing a tantrum for attention, right? If you give them attention, you're rewarding the behavior. To extinguish it, you simply stop reacting. The exact same goes for your habits. You have to redefine success so that you no longer feel a sense of reward or fake productivity when relying on comfortable, low-effort strategies like passively rereading notes. If it feels too easy, recognize that as a sign of ineffective learning, not success. You've got to cut the loop.
Once we stop rewarding the old method, step 2 is getting super specific. We usually have these vague clusters of bad behavior, like saying, "Oh, I'm just studying poorly." We have to identify the exact trigger and the specific unproductive process that follows it. Spotting this exact combo, like encountering dense text instantly activates passive reading, is absolutely essential.
For step 3, you need a pattern interrupt. You do this by predefining a rigid script, something like, if I'm reading a dense passage, I will summarize every paragraph. Or even, I will never highlight on my first read. By deciding your response in advance, you massively save your prefrontal cortex's precious energy. It doesn't have to decide what to do in the moment. It just runs the predefined script, keeping you in that memory destabilization window way longer.
Then step 4 is reflection. After a practice session, when your prefrontal cortex is totally fatigued, stop. Do not try to push through. Take a short break and ask yourself 2 things. How did the old habit show up today? And how did the new method improve things? This improves your future pattern recognition and helps you start feeling genuinely excited by the discomfort of real, active learning, because you can actually see the deeper understanding it brings. Let's move to the final piece of the puzzle, borrowed straight from sports science. Section 5, accelerating your success and speeding up the unlearning timeline.
In sports, if your knees cave in during a heavy squat, you don't just do full workouts hoping it fixes itself, right? You use resistance bands to isolate that specific weakness. Well, the same applies to learning. Instead of exhausting your brain through an entire dragging study session just hoping to naturally encounter your bottleneck, constraint drilling forces you to trigger the problem immediately. This allows for highly targeted energy usage by your prefrontal cortex.
Here is how you can use constraint drilling literally today. You can manufacture a trigger right now by asking an AI to explain something incredibly complex and technical. The moment that familiar feeling of overwhelm hits you, boom, that is your trigger. Immediately deploy your pattern interrupt script. Practice summarizing that dense text in one sentence instead of falling back on verbatim notes. You can master this microprocess without dedicating hours to a full study session.
So before you dive into trying to learn your next complex skill, take a step back. Look closely at your own routines. Find the boulder you're chained to, that habit that feels good but does absolutely nothing for your real progress. Identify your trigger, write your script, and start rewriting that pathway today. So tell me, what hidden, productive feeling habit is secretly holding you back right now? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy unlearning.